Hello and welcome to Immediate Immersion Live. How's everybody doing today? If you're watching this live, go ahead and put in hashtag live. If you're watching this on the replay, put in hashtag replay and let us know a better time and date for you to watch live, if you can. So today, ever feel like you're more of a referee than a teacher in your classroom? You're definitely not alone. But what if you could turn those disruptions into opportunities for growth and learning? In today's Immediate Immersion Live, we're talking mastering classroom challenges with strategies you probably haven't tried yet. Stay tuned to discover how to transform your classroom experience. My name is Scott, and you're watching Immediate Immersion Live, where we're all about comprehension-based instruction in the modern language classroom. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Today we've got lots of things to talk about with disruptive behaviors, but let's go ahead and take care of some housekeeping first. In less than 2 weeks, we have got our Comprehended conference coming out. If it's something you're interested in, let me give you the link to register. US, whoops, that's not the link, comprehended.co/register. And you can purchase 3, 6, 9, and 12-month passes to access. The conference starts on February 17th, so you want to get yourself registered right away if that's something that you're interested in. We have a variety of sessions on comprehensible input from a variety of presenters from around the globe. So again, if that's something you're interested in, you can go ahead and register at comprehended.co/register and get all the information there. And let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I want to talk about is utilizing strategic pauses and redirects. So strategy number 1 is use a nonverbal signal like raising your hand or a special gesture to indicate the need for attention, followed by a moment of silence. And this non-confrontational method often promotes or prompts the students to self-correct. I know one of the teachers I work with, our math teacher, he uses to raise his hand, and the kids find that very effective to get everybody quiet. Other kids, I guess they got this from elementary school. They make this little gesture. I think it's something like this. It's called Quiet Coyote, and they do that to let everybody go, to let everybody know to be quiet and to focus. So whatever nonverbal signal that works for you, you want to integrate that, teach that to your class, let them know what it means, and use it consistently when you need them to quiet down and get their attention. This way, you're not talking over them, because that never works. Kids can always talk over you. And it's just a quiet signal. It's non-obtrusive, and everybody can just look up and follow it. And if they're not paying attention, they're kind of wondering why everybody's getting quiet. They'll look around, they'll see the signal, and it will pass on. A way to modify that slightly is when you do it, then the rest of your class does it as well. So when they acknowledge the signal, they'll raise their hand or do whatever signal. If it's a quiet coyote, whatever it is. So if I'm going to use this raise my hand signal, when I raise my hand to get their attention, then the rest of the class is to raise their hands when they acknowledge it. And then they'll be quiet and they're paying attention. So using the nonverbal signal is a really great way. And as I said, non-obtrusive, non-overbearing way to get students' attention and to get them quieting down. Another trick is to shift to a quick, engaging activity related to the lesson. For example, if you're teaching Spanish and a student interrupts, switch to a rapid-fire round where students name Spanish words related to a specific category. So, for example, if kids are being a little rowdy and having all these side conversations, you can stop what you're doing and let's say, I'm going to say, I want everybody to start. We're going to start going one by one, and everybody's going to give out a Spanish adjective or a Spanish animal or a Spanish word that starts with the letter D. And we're going to go surefire. When I point to you, you give me your word and move it along. That breaks the tension. It breaks that interruption. And then you can go back into your lesson. But it's a quick shift right away. You spend a couple minutes, maybe not even, maybe a few seconds doing it, getting a couple of them, and then go right back to what you were doing. It just breaks it up a little bit so that it can't grow and become more obtrusive in your classroom. Another strategy is to implement a 3-second rule where whenever we get a disruption, you pause for 3 seconds before continuing. And this brief pause allows students to refocus without any direct confrontation. So that really works well. So if I'm seeing that where kids are getting too rowdy or they're trying to talk over me, I'm going to stop for a moment. I'm going to count to 3. I'm not going to show any anger or anything on my face. I'm just going to be calm. I'm going to wait the 3 seconds, and then I'm going to begin again. If that doesn't work, then you need to do the silent treatment. And this works nearly perfectly as long as you follow through. The problem is we don't follow through. So here's this one. If that 3 seconds hasn't worked, then you're going to pause again. And you aren't going to stop pausing until the room is quiet. It's going to be awkward. And in the beginning, you're going to have to sit there quiet for a long period of time. It'll be longer in the beginning, and as they get used to it and they realize that you are not going to play, it will get shorter and shorter and shorter. But if you give in and start teaching again before it is 100% quiet, you've lost the battle. So that's where the problem is. We aren't always willing to wait out as long. So it might be 10 minutes before they finally quiet down and realize. And then if a kid talks, let's say they got quiet down and you started your lesson, and then another kid starts talking again, you've got to stop immediately and wait again until it gets quiet. Each and every time. And you have to be consistent and you have to follow through. If the bell rings, and you didn't finish your lesson, you'll start back the next day. But if they start talking again, you're going to stop again. And you can't give in. The moment you give in, the kids know that they can outlast you, and they will. So you can't give in. I promise you, it will work. You just can't give in. And it may take a little while for your kids, depending on the culture of your kids and how long it will take them to finally pick this up. It may take days, it may take weeks, but you need to stop teaching every time. Discipline before instruction. You can't teach if you have to teach over the conversations. So you wait. They will get it. And it will take less and less time for them to get it each and every time until you won't have to do it anymore. And then you might be saying to yourself, but that's a lot of wasted class time. Yes, it is in the beginning, but it's better than wasting the class time for the rest of the school year. So you lose a lot of it up front, but then you're gaining all of that back in the back end because you're not having to stop every single time for side conversations. So those are my ways to get that side conversation down a little bit. We pause and we redirect. So we can either use our hand signal We can refocus on that quick listing of words. And then we can do the 3-second pause followed by the infinite pause until they learn that we are not going to accept them to be talking over us during the lesson. Next, let's move on to student-led solutions. So my first idea here is to create a classroom contract with input from the students outlining expected behaviors and consequences, and having everyone contribute to these rules ensures that a greater buy-in, and then everybody signs it, including you and yourself, because you need to hold everybody equally responsible for the consequences. Now, this works effectively at the beginning of the school year or the beginning of a term if you switch students at terms, but it can be used in the middle of the school year if you find what you were doing isn't working and you need to do a reset. So you give up a couple of class days and you're going to start talking and having a discussion with your students about what needs to happen to maximize the learning in class. So you want to brainstorm ideas. What does a well-behaved, well-meaning, attentive class look like? How can all of us best learn? What are good habits? What are bad habits? Let's get that out there, and then we can whittle it down into what our expectations for each other are, what the expectations are from the students, from you, and what your expectations from your students are. You will put this into a contract, a list, and then you are also going to brainstorm what the consequences are for breaking them. There are consequences for you for not being consistent, and there are consequences for the students for not following the expected behaviors. And then once you have this all ideaed out, you're then going to make a contract. You're going to make this little document, kind of like the Constitution, and then everybody in class is going to sign it. And their signature means that they acknowledge that these exist, they know what the expected behaviors are, they know what the consequences are, and they're going to do their best to adhere to them on a consistent basis. And so that's that classroom contract idea. Another idea is to assign rotating classroom leaders who can gently remind peers to stay on task or lead a quick group activity to refocus the class. Just like in our first strategies we were talking about, redirecting the commotion with our quick draw words, you could have a team leader do the same thing. Now, you might think that the best team leaders would be the kids that are always well behaving, but that might not necessarily be your best option. They may be well behaving, but they may not be leaders, meaning they can't influence their peers. So you want to find students that have that influence on their peers. And I know it's going to sound counterproductive, but lots of times you're going to look for your biggest troublemakers, because those troublemakers usually cause other kids to also cause trouble because of their leadership qualities. The idea here is to have them switch their leadership activities away from the troublemaking into the good. And by giving them responsibility, you often give them the positive attention they need to not only be successful in class, but to also turn their leadership skills into something beneficial. So you can pick 2 or 3. I wouldn't have more than that. 1 or 2 are usually really, really good. But the third one can be an alternate when someone is absent, and their job is to remind nicely, in a positive way, the class when they're not adhering to the norms and the classroom expectations. And because they're strong leaders, the kids will tend to follow them as long as they do it in a respectful way. If they come down condescending or mean, then that's not going to work, and you're going to quickly replace them out, because that's not going to bring to a positive classroom, and nobody wants to take direction from someone like that. You can also give them some things to help them refocus the class, some ideas. It could be a quick brain break, give them 2 or 3 brain breaks that they could choose from. It could be our rapid fire words that you could use. It could be you could give them a little set of like the sweet 16 verbs, and they can get everybody up and acting out those verbs in a quick pace. And then everybody can sit down, and then we can go right back to what we were working. But these things break up the routine, break up the disruption so that we can get back to what we're doing. Does that make sense? And remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And if you're watching on the replay, put them in the comments. I do answer them back. I answer all of the comments as they come in. My next idea is to encourage peer-to-peer feedback sessions. Now, these are where students discuss disruptions and collectively come up with solutions, promoting a sense of shared responsibility. Now, you don't want to do this too often because you are taking away from instructional time. But maybe once a month, or if there's been a series of a few days where the behavior is just not been conducive to what you are expecting your students to do, then you might want to take a day to do this. But you'll stop, and you won't be using the target language, but you're going to say, class, what are you noticing that's going wrong in class? What expectations or what norms are not being followed? Why do you think these aren't being followed? Are they bad? Are they worded badly? Is there a better way to phrase these? Is it just not an expectation that's important, that it doesn't really help learning at all? It's just there for the sake of being there. What can we do as a class to make the norms more effective? What can we do to self-police ourselves to make the norms more adhered to? So have this discussion. It's going to be an honest discussion, and you may find that the problem is not with your students. It may be with you, like you're not being consistent. So you need to develop a thick skin here and let the students be honest, respectfully, obviously, but be honest with what their ideas are so we can get to the heart of it and then find a solution that we're all willing to live with. And in this section, we talked about involving the students because they're our customers and they have some great ideas. And if what's not working may not be so obvious to you, but it may be very obvious to students. So their feedback and their discussions can really help you fix what the issue is. And they often see things that you might not see, and they're brutally honest, which is what we need during this time. Our next topic is mindfulness and stress reduction. So I'm going to be the first one to tell you this. When people start talking about this, I've been to workshops where they start with this. Everybody take deep breaths, close your eyes. I'm thinking this is hokey pokey. This is not for me. I don't do this kind of stuff. I don't fall under the stress that most people fall under. I don't get stressed that way. I learned when I was much younger that I can only take it day by day, so I try to let things bother me. That's my way of dealing with it. But what I found last year, our counselors came into classes offering to teach mindfulness and stress reduction to classes. And a lot of us teachers took them up with our more troubling classes, our more challenging classes. And I saw the change in my students. And so you may not be into mindfulness and stress reduction, but it's not about you, it's about your students. So they may need this. They have stress within their classes, they have stress within their peers, they have stress within their families. So they may need this. And so, since we are here for our students, you'll want to do these kinds of things or might want to incorporate these things in because your students need them. And so, one of the strategies I learned from our counselors was to start each class with a short mindfulness activity like guided breathing or a stretching exercises. And you can actually incorporate the target language so that you're not like wasting instructional minutes. You can teach them some certain things like how to say breathe, and then you're counting and you're saying inhale and exhale. And then you could do stretching activities or maybe some simple yoga poses, those types of things. And where I really found this effective was after assemblies, after rallies, after PE, when I have a large percentage of my kids coming from PE, and then especially after lunch, because after lunch, they are all hyped up on their sugar and their drinks and just being with their friends. They don't want lunch to end. So it's always the difficult period right after lunch. So trying one of these activities is a calming activity to get everybody back and centered in the instructional mode. So again, it may be hokey for you. Fake it until you make it. Do it anyways, because it can be very helpful to your students, and that's what you're looking for. Usually, the misbehavior is not you. You're not having to tell yourself to behave. It's in the students where a lot of the misbehavior is. So you need to do things that will help them calm themselves down so that they're less likely to be misbehaved. Another idea is to designate a quiet zone in the classroom where students can go to take a brief break. Now, this is in that in-between spot before you actually have to send them out. I try not to send out kids unless their behavior is dangerous to either me, other students, or themselves, or is so bad that it's distracting and causing other types of harm. It might psychological harm or things like that. And they're just cannot be redirected. So I reserve kicking them out of class for that. I don't kick kids out of class very often. But kids need often a timeout, and not a negative timeout, just a break from class for a few moments. So you can set up a little section in your classroom in the corner. You could have a comfortable chair, maybe with a cushion. You could have some, what's the word I'm trying to find? The fidget spinners, those kinds of things. Little fidget toys that are quiet, but can get them to focus on something else. It could be like a squeeze toy, a stress ball. You could even put one of those wobble seats in that are used lots of times for your autistic kids who need a little bit more sensory perception, and you can buy them on Amazon for about $20. They're air inflated and they're odd shaped, so they can't sit still on them, but it will help them to practice some self-calming techniques. You can even have like a little table there or a clipboard, and you can put on there some ideas that the student can do to help self-calm themselves. It could be some instruction on how to do some deep breathing, or to use the stress ball, or to imagine their calming place, something like that. And then there's a timer there. Depending on your class period and how long it is, you can give them a time. It's not an unlimited time. You train them when they go there. They have to start the timer. And so you can have it. My classes are short. They're about 43 minutes. So you can have 3 minutes on the timer for that. And then if they need it, they can hit the timer one more time for a total of 6. If you have longer classes, you might do 4 or 5 minutes. But again, you're limiting how long a kid can stay there to maximum of 2 sets of the timer, whatever that might be. And then they come back and they reintegrate themselves back into the classroom. So that's a very effective strategy as well. The third strategy is to integrate short guided visualization exercises related to the lesson content. For example, in a French class, you can guide them through a peaceful scene around the Eiffel Tower. So you can put a picture of the Eiffel Tower up on the screen. You can tell the kids now to close your eyes, and you're walking through the streets of Paris, and you're coming up to the Eiffel Tower, and you see all the vendors that are out there, and they have little blankets spread out, and they have different souvenirs that you can buy, and you can walk them through the scene. Or if you're teaching a Spanish class, you can have them walk through the Plaza Mayor, and you say you're walking through one of the archways, and you can see the statues in the center, and it's a big open spot with lots of cafes. And then you walk through there and you're exploring all the different things that you can see. And then you turn, you go out this other archway, and off to the right-hand side, there is a great sorbet shop, my favorite sorbet shop in Madrid, that I go and I get 2 scoops of strawberry sorbet. You can walk them through this. So you're actually using the culture of what you're teaching, but you're having the kids imagine themselves going through as you walk them through with your voice through these scenes to help calm them down. So those are 3 ideas for ways that you can use mindfulness and self-calming techniques to help de-energize your class when you need it. Now, if any of you have ever tried those techniques, type in #mindfulness in either the chat or in the comments so that I know that you've been working at it. Let us know how that works for you, if it works well for you. As I said, I was a non-believer. I thought it was hokey pokey. And then I saw it help a lot of my students last year. And so I realized that it is something that my kids need. Next, let's talk about leveraging technology. And what I use for this is a free app called Class Dojo. Now, I used to think I'm not using this app. It's too goofy. It's too juvenile. It's too childish. And I kind of foo-fooed it just like I did with the mindfulness. But then last year, I had a really challenging disenfranchised first period. I loved the kids, but they really didn't know how to play school. And so I needed to work on something. And so one of the ideas my French teacher threw out, she said that she'd been using Class Dojo both in high school and middle school. And I'm like, I tried that. It really didn't work out for me. She goes, well, let me show you. So during one of our PLC times, she taught us how she used Class Dojo. I took what she gave me and I adapted it to what I do in my classroom and kind of combined. Up to Class Dojo, for nearly 20 years, I would hand out little slips of paper that kids would maintain and keep track of, and then use them to buy privileges for things in the classroom. But it was very time consuming for me because I've got to make the copies of these things. I had to cut them all up. I had to keep track of them. I always had them in my pockets. Sometimes I forgot to take them out of my pockets and then they got washed in the wash. It was just a disaster. So I tried doing this with Class Dojo. So Class Dojo, as I said, is a free app. Why I like it is because kids can see where they stand, how many points they have by logging in. They can see what they got their points for. They can see a leadership board to see where they stand within their class. And then they can buy things with their points. So the strategy is to set up a point system in Class Dojo where students earn points for positive behaviors like participation, helping your classmates, overcoming personal challenges. For me, I put in there points for anything that I wanted them to continue doing. So any kind of behavior that I wanted them to continue doing, I awarded points for. I gave 1 point for every student showing up to class on time. So after I took attendance, I gave all the kids who were there on time a point. If they were on task doing the warm-up, they got a second point. If they ask a question or they answer a question, whether right or wrong, they got a point. If on conversation day their name was chosen and we engaged in a conversation, they would get 5 points because we had a conversation. It usually lasted at least 5 to 10 minutes, if not more. And then they would get their conversations based off that. They would get points based off that. So I would just put the points in. If I was at my desk near my computer, I could put them right in. I had a tab open to the Class Dojo site, and I could just add the points in. Or on my phone, if I'm walking around conversating with my students, I could just tap on their icon on my phone and give them points. What's great about Class Dojo is it sets off a tone, a happy tone that lets them know that somebody got a point. And if you have the tab showing up on your screen, it will show the name of who got the point and why. But even if you don't have it up, because I didn't always have it up, the kids are like, was that my point? Was that my point? Was that my point? Because they wanted those points. Now, I also put in a negative points for off-task behaviors. I never took away more than 1 point for one of those. And it would make a sad or a dong noise. So kids knew someone got in trouble for something, but Class Dojo would never show the name. So nobody knew who that was. But it kind of put everybody back on check to say, oop, he's paying attention. So I don't want to get one of those on there. So that's how I kind of use that. And the kids, I said, can keep track. Then I would have a Google Doc, Google Form doc that kids could send in and tell me it had all the different things they could buy with their points and the point value. That would come to me. I would give them what they ordered, and then I would deduct the points from Class Dojo, and Class Dojo makes it really easy to deduct points. So it really works well. My only complaint with Class Dojo is that it doesn't have a way for kids to actually order things. They have the reward where you can take it away, but not to actually like put a menu of things that they can buy. So I just use a Google form for that. It works best. Now, what's great also about Class Dojo is if you chose to do this, I tried doing it last year and I didn't have very much success with parents wanting to connect with it, but you can send out messages to the parents of each student so that they can get updates about what their kids are doing. So they can see the kids' scores, they can see what they got positive points for, they can see what they got negative points for, and it makes a good communication between you and your parents if that's something that they are interested in. I had about a 30% buy-in by parents. So I really this year I didn't even try to connect with parents on it. I didn't do it that way at all. But I forgot to mention, I tried it with that first class and it was so successful and they got so excited that I quickly rolled it out the next week to all of my classes. And then this year, when I started this year, all of my classes were enrolled in Class Dojo. There's also another aspect of Class Dojo that you can use where kids can add to a story, or it's a portfolio type feature. And it allows students to share classwork or projects, which can motivate them to stay engaged and minimize disruptions. I haven't used, I'll be honest, I haven't used this aspect yet, but if you are into this portfolio type of work, it might be something that you might want to think and to incorporate in to what you're doing with Class Dojo. I know that I only scratch the surface of what Class Dojo can do, but what I do use religiously, and it really works well for my class, and it saves me lots of time because I no longer have to go ahead and worry about making the copies for my points and cutting them up into small pieces of paper and always having them with me. I always have my phone with me, so if I need to give points that say I'm out of class and a kid talks to me in Spanish, I can just open up the app and then give them a points right away. It works really, really easily. And I don't have to worry about washing them in my pants. Okay, our last topic today is adopting a teachable moment mindset. So, when a disruption relates to the lesson content, you can pause to explore that topic in more depth, turning the disruption into a learning opportunity. So, these don't always happen, but when they do, if you can pounce on them and turn them into teachable moments, it works really, really well. So, for example, I'll give you a good example. If kids start teasing other kids in a negative way, there's positive teasing and there's negative teasing. When it's in a negative way, then I'll turn into a teaching moment and I'll talk about what's culturally appropriate in a lot of Spanish-speaking countries is they give what Americans would think would be politically incorrect nicknames. So if they're short, they could be, be called shorty, or if they're fat, they could be called fatty, or if they've got a big nose, they could be called big nose. And in America, that is totally politically incorrect. However, in many Spanish cultures, it's not. It's a term of endearment, and it's not meant to be a negative thing. So we can talk about this and turn that teasing, that negative teasing around into something more positive in there, because we don't have to look at it as a negative thing. And I try to then explain to my students that, humans are 99% the same. We eat food, we all go to the bathroom, we have to breathe oxygen, we can see, we can hear, we can taste, we can smell, we can feel. 99%, regardless of what country you're from, regardless of what language you speak, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of the color of your eyes or your hair, regardless of the religion that you practice, we're 99% the same. But it's that 1% that makes us different, that makes us interesting. And so we want to grasp onto that and turn that from a negative into something that is positive. Another idea is to facilitate class discussions post a disruption, encouraging students to reflect on how the incident could be a learning experience, both academically and socially. So if something really bad happened, I will go, okay, that happened, and then we can talk about it. We can see, how did that make you feel? How could we avoid this in the future, if possible, not always possible? What can we learn from this? And how can we take what we learn from it, apply it in class and also outside of school? So there are sometimes that a disruption or something happens in class or something happens at the school as a whole. And we have to, we can't just let it sit there. We need to address it. Like a couple of years ago, there was a TikTok challenge about vandalizing the bathrooms, and our bathrooms were getting vandalized a lot. They were tearing the toilet paper holders off the walls. They were tearing the paper towel holders off the walls. And so this was systemic amongst all of our, it wasn't happening in my class. It was systemic around the whole school. And so we just had to stop and talk about that and what we could do as a school to prevent that. Another time we had a kid who had a violent background and expressed some violent ideations, not against any kid at school, but against a relative. But it was scary, and the words that they used were scary, and he had to be removed from the class, and counselors all got involved. But we all witnessed it. And so just going back to class was not enough. We needed to talk about that so that we could identify what the issues were, get everybody's feelings out so that we can make this into a teachable moment and turn that around. And lastly, we can use disruptions to highlight cultural or linguistic differences, especially because we teach language, to broaden students' understanding and appreciation of the subject matter. So, this is a classic example when I'm teaching certain things, especially foods, and some foods that that other cultures eat are not culturally accepted here in America. So my kids react with, oh, that's gross, that's disgusting. But then I use this to teach them that you may not want to partake in that. But by saying that, you're kind of putting a negative tone on that other person, and you're making him feel bad for something that is culturally appropriate for them. And who is it for us to say that what they do and what's a part of their life is gross or disgusting? So you can just say something like, that's interesting. Tell me more about it. So that you change the tone of it. Now you can still say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to eat that. I'm not going to try that. It's not for me, but I'm interested in learning more about that. And then we can talk, and then the kids go, yeah, but nobody thinks anything that we do is gross. And I'm like, well, a lot of Asian cultures don't like cheese. They think that is gross. And they're like, cheese? I mean, in America, cheese is everything. Kids love cheese, and the more cheese, the better. Or how Hindus don't appreciate that we eat cow, we eat beef. So there are things that we eat and partake in that are disgusting to other cultures and religions. So we can talk about those things. Or when I talk about La Tomatina, which is basically a food fight with tomatoes, kids like, oh my gosh, that is like, sounds like fun but kind of dumb. And I'm like, well, there are certain things that we do that are dumb. There is something called pumpkin chunkin', where they take pumpkins and put these on the contraptions and see how far that they can fly them. There's also cow patty throwing contests where people pick up dried cow poop and throw them as far as they can. So there's lots of different things. When we talk about bullfighting, and not to condone it necessarily, but just to say it exists and this is what it is, kids are like, that's awful. But I'm like, a lot of people think it's the same way for us doing when we do our rodeos in America, that those are considered not so great. So try to switch it around. Try to use something in that's cultural, or if it's a linguistic thing that you can bring in and compare and contrast to kind of turn the situation around. So those are my 5 things to help with disruptive behaviors and ways that you can turn things around positively. If you have any ideas, please feel free to put them in the comments in there and let us know and share out with us so we can all learn from each other. If you are watching this on the replay, again, please let us know that you are watching the replay by typing in #replay. Also, if there's a better day of the week and a better time where you could participate live, let us know. I'm interested in trying to get more people to show up live. We get lots of people who show up on the replays, but not so many in the live, and I really want to get us more engaged and make this more engaging. So I'm open. So anytime after 3 p.m. Pacific, and we have Monday through Sunday available, let me know what works for you. If it's a weekday, it has to be after 3 because of school, but on the weekends, we have different times available. If that would work better, just let me know. Let me see. Next week, what we're going to be talking about. Let me pull that up really quick here. We're going to be talking about games. So we'll be talking about games next time. And then the following week, we're going to take a break for our President's Day. I'll have a replay showing of a previous live event. That will show that following week on the 19th, and then we'll be back on the 26th. But I will see you all next week, same time, same channel, Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. I wish you all a great week. Have a great one, everybody. Goodbye.